We forget that you don't have to be famous to have the ability to change at least your own personal history, to change the direction we go in our life. We have the power to choose, even if you haven't before. You can finally say, no more, I won't put up with that, within myself or from anybody else. And here's what I'm going to do differently. That's where the breakthroughs really start to happen. Now the question is, why do some people stand their ground and make something change versus other people just kind of accept things? Why do some people make bold decisions and other people make decisions that are based on trying to hang on to what they've got? Well, that's a more complex question to answer than we might have in a few minutes in this one session, but it is one that I've spent my life studying. Because when you can change your decisions, you can change your life. When you can change the force that controls your decisions, you can change anything in your life. At some level, we have certain beliefs and values. But if I was going to make it simple, I'd say there's two things that determine your choices. The first thing is the state of mind and emotion you're in at that moment. Think about it. Have you ever snapped at somebody and had nothing to do with them? It was just the state you're in, right? You're frustrated, you're pissed off about something, and in that state of mind, whatever they said got interpreted through that state, and you made up a meaning like they were an irritant or they were interrupting you. They weren't. You probably felt bad afterwards. When we get in the wrong state, we make the wrong decisions. When you get in a strong, empowering state, you'll make a better decision. What I want to talk to you about today for this brief little session is how to break through a crisis. Crises happen, whatever type of crises you go through in your life, and I know you've had many, when we make some choices unconsciously and we get consequences. And we make them unconsciously because we're trying to get what we want. We don't really know what we value most. We don't know what we need. And we find ourselves waking up one day and going, why is my life this way? It's kind of like life is always calling to us to constantly grow and improve. You know, if you're going to look at what's going to make life work, it's really simple. What makes people happy is progress. We're happy when we're progressing. If you're overweight, but you leave today and you say, you know what, this breakthrough thing, what I got today for me more than anything else is, I've been stuck waiting for some magical diet, some magical exercise plan, some magical time in the future when we have more time. There is no more time. I don't need to wait for that. I'm just going to make a decision today to get started. I don't need to go out there and go interview 20 trainers and get online. I don't need somebody to give me a perfect plan. I need just to pick up my shoes and start walking. I need to just get somebody behind me who just goes, run! I don't need to wait for perfection. I'm going to do something right now. I choose to get fit. I choose to walk. I choose to run. I choose to go join a club. I'm doing it now. A breakthrough happens the moment you make a new choice. And you don't have to wait. You can just get yourself in a new state. Maybe this tape will get you doing. Or you just have to have a new thought that says, you know what? I made choices in the past. I'm overweight because I chose to eat this and this. I'm not going to eat it anymore. I'm changing now. You can change your whole life real fast with just a few choices. But if you don't make the right choices, eventually you're going to face a crisis. Crisis is when you made so many poor choices that sooner or later life shows up, and instead of asking gently for you to change and improve, to grow, to make progress, to be happy, life, when it's a crisis, now demands change. It isn't asking anymore. We borrowed money as a society and we overspent and we talked about changing and we knew we had to change, and now a crisis happens and guess what? Nobody has a choice. The game has changed. And what crisis does is it melts us down. It melts us down so that we can recast our life. We can remold ourselves. And usually on the other side, our life is greater because as we go through that crisis, we have to grow. Everybody wants change. Nobody wants to do it. Everybody, I should say, wants progress, but nobody wants to change. Everybody wants their life better, but nobody wants to do the push-ups, the running, have the economic or emotional discipline to make it happen. But if you're watching this right now and you're still with me, some part of you wants more. And I'm saying to you, choose it. And the way you're going to choose it is really simple. If you're in that crisis, what keeps you in the crisis is probably because you're being reinforced. Where are you and I addicted to our problems? Where are you and I reinforced? So many people, when they have a big problem, listen, if things are going well, you say, oh, it's going so great. Your friends go, well, that's great. And after a while, they go, well, easy for you. But if you got a problem, people go, hey, I understand, and they connect with you. Where do we get addicted to our problems? If you want to make a new choice, if you want to make a new decision today, if you want to have a breakthrough in some area of your life, you got to give up the story that it's not your fault, and you got to give up the attention and the love and the connection and the commiserating that comes with it with other human beings. Here's how you change. 5 simple, quick steps, and then I'm going to give you a little tool that if you want to, you can go online and really make a change with. If you're gonna change your life, step one, I don't care if something has happened to you. You know, somebody has spilled oil all over where you fish. It's horrific, it's disgusting how they've dealt with it, but it's happened and you gotta deal with it. Something's happened, someone in your family's been injured, you've lost your job. I don't care what the problem is. If you're in a crisis, step number one, see it as it is, but don't see it worse than it is. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean be Mr. or Miss Positive Thinking. By now, if you spend any time with me, you know I'm not about that. I'm not here to tell you, go to that garden and chant, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. Doing affirmations is not gonna change your life. You gotta go see where the weeds are and pull them out. My point is simple. You gotta see what the problem is, but you can't make it so horrific that you just give up. That's the first step. Step two, get to the real truth and deal with it. Don't just see it as it is and not worse than it is. Don't just like balance it, but now get to the truth. I mean, listen, if the truth is you've been trying to get a job for 2 years and you truly have worked every day in a particular industry, and the number of jobs in that industry have shrunk down, and you really aren't getting that job, then you might have to look at the truth. The truth is you might have to retool. You might have to say, gosh, you know, the industry I'm in is gone. I mean, gross, simplistic example, but for years, vinyl records were around for 85 years. My point is, if you're in the vinyl record business, you got to tell yourself the truth. You got to see it as it is, not worse than it is, but you also got to get the truth and deal with it. You got to deal with the cards you're dealt. You're going to have to retool. You're going to have to change something. You might have to move. If you live in the Gulf, and I don't support anything that's happened there, who could? It's unconscionable what's happened with BP. But if you live in the Gulf and you're a third-generation fisherman, and you fish for oysters, and they're dead, you better get to the truth. Are they going to be dead for 2 years or 10 or 20 to the best of your ability? And you might say, well, I can't do anything else. I can't. I'm a third generation. This is all I know. Yes, you can. Get to the truth and deal with it. Deal with the card you dealt with. You got to deal with it, sure, I'm sure legally, but in the meantime, you got to take care of your family. If you're having an economic crisis, got to deal with it. Got to downsize, right size, do whatever it takes. And I say, okay, Tony, well, so far you're telling me don't allow myself to make it so bad I don't try, see it as is, but don't make it worse than it is, and you're telling me get to the truth and deal with it. Well, that's nice, but you know, how do I do that? Maybe the third step, more than just getting the role model, maybe to be more specific, is get a vision first. Get a vision and get strong. That's what I think your third step should be. You first tell yourself the truth, yes, see it as it is, not worse than it is, tell yourself the truth and deal with it, but the way to deal with it is say, what am I going to go for? There's got to be a compelling future. I got to come up with a vision for my life, or a vision for my relationship. I've had terrible relationships, nothing's worked. Tell yourself the truth. I've made poor choices, or I've told myself stories and gave myself excuses, or I've not had the courage, whatever it is, get to the truth, and then get yourself a vision for what you do want. Because you have to have something you're going to move towards. Does that make sense? Without a vision, people perish. It says in a very good book called The Good Book. And I know there are many good books, but that's a good one to take a look at. We need something to go for. We can deal with any problem today as long as there's something that we can look for in the future that we can strive for. It'll give us the emotional and psychological fuel, the juice, to keep moving forward. So you got to come up with a vision, and a way to do that, we'll call that step 4. Get a role model. You might get the vision from a role model, you might get the vision just from coming up with a new idea. But in order to figure out how to go from where you are to where you want to be, to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be, it's best to learn by other people's experience whenever you can. So get a role model, get their strategy, and go to work. Get into action. But you won't be able to do it when you're telling yourself the sky is falling and it's over. When you see it worse than it is, you'll just give up. You won't do it if you don't tell yourself the truth is, you know what, this system isn't working. I got to do something. I got to change my finances. I got to change my job. I got to reach. If you don't tell yourself the truth and deal with the truth, the real truth, nothing's going to happen. You won't ever even think about a guy like John Templeton if you don't have a vision that says, I don't care how the environment is, I'm going to find a way to do well. And you won't do well unless you get a strategy based on a role model who's really done it. My whole thing is this: if anybody has something you want, they aren't lucky. They did something. If you model them, if you take similar steps, you can produce a similar result. Make sense? And then finally, the 5th step, look, if you're in a situation where you see it as is, but not worse than it is, if you've told yourself the truth and you dealt the cards you're dealt with and just decided you're going to change it and you're willing to do what's necessary, If you put yourself in a place where you got a new vision and you gotten yourself strong, if you got a role model and you got some strategy and you got yourself into action, step 5 is give much more than you expect to receive. Deal with what is, without exaggeration, with total honesty, dealing with the cards, coming up with a vision, finding yourself a role model that shows your strategy, work your tail off, give, keep changing your approach, and you can get where you want to go. Make sense? Now, that might sound like a lot. So to get you started, here's what I'd like you to do for this session. Start out, if you want, by taking a big crisis or problem you have and going through these steps, saying, okay, what's really true? And let me exaggerate, let me stop the exaggeration. Let me not make it worse than it is. Just let's define what's true. Let's stop the story. Just here's what it is. We got this much financial challenge. We got this physical challenge, whatever it is. And then go to step 2. All right, let's find out the truth. Let's get the details. Let's get the details and figure out what we're going to do. And then here's where we're going to go. This is where we're going to eventually get to. It might take us longer to get where we want to go, but we're going to get here. Who's done it that we can model, that we can follow the steps in? Who can coach us? And let's just work our tail off and change every day.
And people worry. They think, if I can bring myself to a place of feeling good under any conditions, then won't the universe just give me more awful things over which I have to overcome? We say it doesn't work that way at all. You break out into this room of freedom when you finally get it, that you can be stable and in alignment no matter what. And there are so many people that are determined to focus upon some awful thing in the world, and we do not deny that there are awful things happening in the world. They're determined to focus upon some awful thing in the world and fixate on it with some intention of they're fixating on the awful thing, somehow then shedding light on it and solving the problem. And we say fixating on the awful thing only separates you from the solutions, from the answers, and from who you are the whole time that you're fixated on it. And we think that at very deep levels you understand that. That's why you've trained yourself to be so ultra sensitive that you don't even want to watch a bird's nest fall. But we want you to understand that you want your sensitivity to prepare you for alignment under any and all conditions, not to coach you into a corner where you are depriving yourself of opportunity to have experiences. The only freedom that you will ever experience is the freedom from negative emotion. And negative emotion, the freedom from negative emotion, does not mean depriving yourself of exposure to experience. It means tuning yourself to the best of every experience. And it's such an interesting thing, because as you tune yourself and tune yourself and tune yourself, the level of experiences parlays into greater and greater and greater and greater things. You just have to know, even as you've been moving around through these cities that this ship has taken you to, don't you notice a remarkable difference in the vantage point or the viewpoint of the people who live upon your planet? Can't you just feel the differences in the way they see the world and the differences in the results of the way they see the world? And doesn't it make you, the more of the world that you see, doesn't it make you understand that you have no hope of ever controlling it? And so doesn't it make you want to just sort of give that up? So when you give up control of the polar bears, or you give up control of the bird nest, or you give up control of whatever it is that's worrying you, and instead you gain control of your ability to focus upon something that feels good regardless of where you are standing, then you'll discover the freedom that you understood when you were born, the freedom to stay tuned into source energy,